Yes, I think so.
Yeah, fantastic. So good morning, everybody. It is the 27th of February 2016 and another instalment of the live Datasheet reviews. Good morning, Pete. How are you?
Good morning, Matt. Very well, and good morning, everybody. Welcome to the webinar.
Fantastic. So, look, without any further ado, there's no particular or exciting announcements to get into. We're just going to review some races from last Saturday. I can see up here being the 20th. Is that right, Pete?
Correct. And
Fantastic.
I don't think we've looked at Saturday for a while. And we'll also make reference to Sunday. Sunday was an interesting day. It featured exclusively percentage return races, but they ultimately produced quite a reasonable profit. So we'll see how we go. Even if I don't go through them all, I might select one or two, and we'll look at the outcome and just have a bit of a discussion based around that.
Fantastic. And remember, any questions about the data that we're showing that might enlighten others and also enlighten yourself, do go ahead and ask them. That's what I'm here to do, to curate the questions. So, Pete, over to you, mate.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. And I think there might be a couple of newer clients joining in today. Flores might be one, and I spoke to him yesterday, and he indicated that he was going to join in. So that's really good. This is a good sort of way of getting some appreciation of how to prioritise correctly using the software.
Fantastic.
All right. Righto, off we go with the first race. Now, this is an interesting one. Now, seasoned campaigners, of course, will look at this and say, ha, we have a $1.90 favourite, we have a money gap associated with it bigger than 2, we have quite solid dominant money support for that favourite. How, why, and of course the pool's okay, why have we not chosen mega factor? Given that, I suppose in terms of progressive indications, you can see it would be justified. Notice at the 3-minute mark the win dividend is $2.20. At the 2-minute mark it's $2.10. At the 1 minute, at 2-minute mark, sorry, $2.10, and then at 1 minute it's $1.90. So, that sort of reinforces the fact that the money has been pretty consistently solid for that runner over that lead-up period to the 1-minute mark. However, if we choose mega factor, we effectively deny ourselves quite a strong and clearly defined trading opportunity, because we've got to cover 80% of the money for second. And that would mean that second place we have to go right to the bottom like third, which would rule the race out on too many combinations. So, given that there is quite a strong and clear-cut money profile demonstrating here, particularly at the 1-minute mark and back at the 2-minute mark, you can see the strength of money for these two runners, and then the clear-cut secondary money for these two, and then us reducing below that point. We're going to opt for group selections, in which case we can stop our selections for second at number 1. And if we go to percentage return, you can see that we have separators as counterparts to the money gap locations that we're working with in trifecta. So there's our first trading opportunity with 48 combinations and a winning outcome, which is always what we're desiring to achieve. All right, so it's just weighing up the pros and cons and saying, well, if I go mega factor, and curiously enough, had mega factor been chosen, it would have been bombed out because number 3 was the ultimate winner. So probably a fortuitous selection choice there. Okay, all right, moving on to the next one. Pretty similar really in construction. This time we're obliged to cover the top 2 runners for first. We're going to cover down to runner 10 for second, and once again we're going to go to the bottom for third. pretty clear cut, basic money gap selections, and they certainly best accommodate the prevailing money profile at this point here. You can see strength, I suppose, top tier of money support, secondary tier of money support, and then a lower level of money support from there on down, and that's sort of mirrored back at the 2-minute interval as well. And so that's our second trading opportunity for the day. If we go to percentage return, once again you can see we've got the separators reinforcing our selections in trifecta. I think in each instance the separators here are slightly bigger than the money gaps in trifecta, and so a bona fide selection choice. Moving to BRO2 now, and we go to, now wait a minute, I'll go back to trifecta just so that I don't rush it. So you can see here we've, trifecta has been ruled out because, I mean, if we complete the money gap selections, we're going to have a series of guideline breaches, and so that effectively rules out trifecta as an option. But we go to percentage return, and here we are. Here's our, one of our old favourites here. The favourite number one, very strong in terms of percentage, very strong in terms of the size of the associated separator at the 1-minute interval. Top two runners holding more than 47.5% of the money. A clearly defined separator for the group. Strong cumulative money here. Strength of money at the 1-minute mark, particularly for the favourite. I mean, the favourite's super strong. And so that's our first trading opportunity, given that the return is above the 50% in and that first opportunity in percentage return. And it's not surprising that the favourite number one actually won, given the amount of support. Look at the strength of money for the favourite all the way down. Okay. Now we have a bit of a wait for the next trading opportunity. So of course we all know that patience is a virtue when we're operating this software. In fact it's an imperative. Don't ever fall into the trap of going searching for betting opportunities, because once you start doing that, then you're sort of adopting a punter's mentality, which is exactly what we're not about with this. All right, now if I just unlock this to start with, let's have a look at our basic selections here. Our basic selections, of course, money gap selections would be the top 3 runners for first, top 4 runners for first, top 4 runners for second, covering at least 70% of the money, and of course we'd be bringing the selections down to there for third if we were making basic selections. But if we look at what's going on as far as the money profile is concerned, we can see quite clearly that the dominant money, overwhelming strength of money, is for these top 4 runners over the bottom 4. And because these 4 runners are holding 88.86% of the money, then it would be more than acceptable to make the allowance, percentage allowance for third, giving us 24 combinations. Look at the size of the money gap in confirming that strength of money for the top 4 runners. So that money gap is 3.87. So it's telling you there's almost a 4 times leap in win dividend value. $5.30 going to $20.50. So really there is a field of 8 in this race, but there's only 4 really serious contenders. And I'm sure if we go to percentage return, you can see that the separator defining the cumulative money group that's most dominant over the last 5 intervals is even bigger than our defining money gap in trifecta. So this is a good example of where applying the percentage allowance for third place would be most warranted and most justified. And of course that helps to, by optimising the selections in that way, using the allowance effectively and justifiably, you've maximised the return in a winning situation. If you applied the basic selections without sort of consideration of the percentage allowance, then you're ruling the race out on the basis of a guideline breach. I suppose if you went...
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
When making that, because there's a few new people on the line and people haven't been here for a while, and just wanted to get clarity wrapped around the allowance there. So the 88.86, is there a number that you will go down to in the 80s?
Yes.
Yeah.
86.5.
Rightio. Okay.
The range is 86.5 to 90.
Yep.
Right? So, you know, basic selections are 50, 70, 90. However, we're prepared to concede back to 86.5.
86.5, okay.
Right, so that's the absolute...
And also, and that's also, it requires, how big does the money gap need to be? Is it a regular 1.5 money gap or larger?
Yeah, 1.5 and up.
Okay, great.
When we're dealing with second place percentage allowances, we look for a slightly larger minimum money gap size. Obviously, because we're restricting our selections, I suppose, you know, more severely by making a percentage allowance for second. So we look for a minimum money gap size of 1.7 or greater. But, you know, really, Matt, the key element to this is the money review, looking at the money profile, because it's the money profile that creates the other indicators.
Understood.
So, you know, the story is, it's like cause and effect. It's, you know, the information is telling us a story. It's saying, well, there's the money action, and confirming that is the location and size of the defining money gap. The percentage is 88.86. Therefore, I can apply the allowance effectively to maximise or optimise my return in a winning situation, and that's the reason behind applying allowances.
Fantastic. So I know that a lot of people know that, but I just wanted to draw that out of you just to get really clear on that sort of allowances, because sometimes it's a bit fuzzy for people, but it is a stated rules, 86.5 and larger than 1.5 in the secondary and in the second and third places, correct?
Yeah, 67.5, 86.5 for third.
Yeah.
So 67.5 through to 70.
Yep.
We're prepared to go to an extra percentage differential for third place, because you're dealing with selections lower down the field. You know, the more restrictive you are in your selection making, the more I suppose the stronger the reasoning behind it has got to be.
Great.
You know, there's got to be a much stronger reason for making a percentage allowance for second than there is perhaps for third.
Okay. Now, just a quick question to the audience here is that how many of you were trading on? Who got that on Saturday? Who actually traded that race and made money? So while I've got people answering that, Pete, you can just carry on.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, we'll move on to the next race, which was the very next one, and of course, obviously, not a consideration in trifecta, but most certainly a consideration in percentage return. Now, if I just take the lock off, we can see that we're dealing with a weak favourite, right? Quite very weak favourite, actually, number 8. And I suppose the group that's most money competitive with our very weak favourite would be quite clearly 16, 13 and 10, defined by our separator. So that would be the group that we'd be stacking up against this favourite. However, this group on its own doesn't hold 47.5% of the cumulative money. So that means in order to make up the shortfall, we're obliged to add the weak favourite to our group. That still gives us a trading opportunity. And in this instance, it's created a winning opportunity because the favourite, even though it was very weak, won the race. And I'll just go back to the 2-minute mark. No, it was the favourite at 2 minutes too. So, so it is important to remember that you've got to have that. If you're going to trade with a group, or you're considering trading with a group, we're looking to that group to hold a minimum of 47.5% of the cumulative money to start with. If the group does not, then the favourite, even though it's a weak favourite, must be included. If you're dealing with a strong favourite, of course, as people would know, you're obliged to add the favourite, come what may. And of course, if you have a group that you're stacking up against a weak favourite that is of its own accord holding more than 47.5% of the cumulative money, remember that the favourite's got to show a positive value in the UDIF column or a negative value in the UDIF column, and it's got to have no numbers in the WUP column. If it's showing a negative value in the UDIF and or numbers in the WUP column, then it's got to be included with the group. Okay.
So, Pete, a couple of people did grab that that trade, and also there's a few questions coming through, and I'll answer those in typing as well. So I'm happy to answer people without necessarily interrupting the flow. So, Pete, I'll let you get back into it, and I'll just mute myself and type away here.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Okay. All right. Next race. Now, this is an interesting one, as you'll see. Looking at it on face value at the, I guess particularly at the 1 minute interval, if you look at the money profile, quite clearly the selections could involve a percentage allowance for third place, 88.87, quite a large money gap, defining money gap. You can see how, the dominant money here is for the top two runners, which we're covering as our basic money gap group for first, and the secondary money quite clearly is held by runners down to runner 2. But if we go to percentage return, we don't have a defining separator at this level. That is the counterpart of that money gap. So the separator, there are two separators here. There's one further up, which sort of indicates that these two runners are in the same money category cumulatively, and it indicates that these 3 runners are in the same money bracket cumulatively. But you can see it doesn't sort of coincide with the location of the separator, money gap in trifecta. Now, if we go back, and we'll take it back to say even 3 minutes, I won't take it right back, at 3 minutes, or 2 minutes 30, and back at 3 minutes, our selections for second and third would be down to that level there. That would apply at the next interval. It would apply at the 2 minute interval, and only at the 1 minute interval do we have a money gap appearing at runner 2 to, I suppose, enable us to reduce our selections for second back to that point, applying the basic selection process and bringing third place down to there, like so. Or applying the percentage allowance, as I said. And of course, if you look back at the previous intervals, the definition of money wasn't as clear cut. you know, it was pretty even Steven going right down to the bottom of the field here, right down to that level. And it was only here that some definition was sort of introduced. So I guess there are a couple of options here. A, you could make the percentage allowance based wholly and solely on what you're seeing at the 1 minute interval in terms of the prevailing money profile, or you could make the basic money gap selections like that, or no, like that, or given that over the lead-up period the selections for second and third went all the way down to the lower money gap like that, perhaps that would reinforce trading out of the race at the 1 minute interval. In other words, ignoring the appearance of this this money gap here and saying, well, and if we go back there like that, I mean, it still rules the race out because you've got a guideline breach. But there could be two schools of thinking here. So, you know, it is important, as we say all the time, to be doing a progressive review and prioritise based on the complement of your total awareness of all the, you know, the pros and cons associated with what's appearing. If you're thinking to yourself, well, a selection opportunity only appeared out of the blue at the 1 minute interval, all the way along I would have been ruling the race out, I'm going to give priority to what I've seen over the lead-up period, over and above what I've seen at the 1 minute interval, then you would eliminate the race. If you prioritised based on what the strength of money support at the 1 minute interval, then it would be a trading race applying either just the basic 50, 70, 90 selections or even optimising to accommodate that percentage allowance, like so. So this is an example of where a race, and I mean I have gone into that in some detail to highlight that it's essential for you to be able to be aware of all the priorities that govern possible selection making and make a confident decision based on that totality of presentation. Because if you're not, you know, if you're not doing a progressive review and you're not picking up on these things, then very often you make a selection that possibly you regret at some later stage. And I think whatever your decision that you make at the, whatever the decision that is made at the 1 minute mark, you want to be, it needs to be a confident one, you need to be happy about it, and then you're going to be philosophical about the ultimate outcome in the race. I mean, obviously if it's a winning outcome, you're going to be very pleased, but I think if you're making selections based on total awareness, then you tend to be a little bit more philosophical about the losing opportunities that do occur. And of course the final selection, I'm talking about percentage allowance for second, and this is a good example. At the 1 minute interval we have the top, well let's just go back for the benefit of everybody that's probably just renewing their awareness with this. The basic selections for second would come down to there. But based on what we're seeing at the 1 minute interval in particular, and back at the 2 minute and 3 minute intervals, in terms of money profile, it would be justifiable to make a money gap, a second place money gap allowance, or sorry, second place percentage allowance, I'll get it right, second place percentage allowance, because we're holding 68.25%, those top three runners as a group. Remember, 67.5 through to 70% is the range. Look at the size of the defining money gap, it's 2.73, and I guess that very much confirms the strength of money for these top three runners relative to the rest of the field, and we see that all the way along, particularly at this point, and once again reinforced at the 1 minute interval. if we go to percentage return, look at the size of the separator at the third runner, 5.76. So that is a telling endorsement that the overwhelmingly dominant money for the top three runners over the 5-minute period is in place, and so that all those indicators very much help to confidently justify making the percentage allowance for second place, which gives you a trading opportunity and quite a healthy return. And if we go to the the ultimate data sheet, you can see how the profit, I mean, really speaking at this stage, I guess there could be some thinking given to taking the profit and leaving, but if you continued on, the profit, as you can see, sort of builds quite nicely to quite a healthy level here, and of course if you stick it out to the bitter end, well, you're going to get the extra reward. But I mean, I would think that the majority of people would be, particularly if they continued to trade after this particular race here and regained the ascendancy back to this point in terms of profit making, they would be thinking about exiting and counting their blessings and counting their profit, counting their dollar return. But irrespective of the exit point, another profitable trading day, and I don't think that it could be said that any of those trading opportunities were sort of contentious. I mean, there was a certain, the one that I showed, this one here, of course there were options to consider there, but all the other selections were pretty straightforward, I would have thought. And we will look at one race that wasn't traded on this day.
Hey Pete, while you're looking for that, just got a question from Dan saying, is there a case to be made to just focus on the early races, as it seems that it can be profitable early and then it goes up and down money-wise?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on I suppose the early out, what's happening earlier on. If you have a very good strong trading opportunity that's quite profitable early on, it's probably not a bad idea to consider calling it a day. I mean, it depends on what you're comfortable with and what your expectations are. The key is not to be too ambitious, not to be overly ambitious, but also don't accept a profit that's don't be too limiting on the level of profitability that you would like to see as an ideal.
So you don't see any extra value in early races versus late races?
If the early races produce a healthy return, there and then, I'd say call a halt.
Okay, I think Dan's just trying to optimise his use of the program and say, right, well, if I can't look at the early races, I shouldn't look at all for the day. I know that there's a couple of customers who had that discipline and wrapped around, certainly Peter and Chris and a few of the other big players always said that they would, if they missed the first races, they would actually not even trade for the entire day, because that was setting themselves up. I know that George does that as well. He needs to be there at the Open.
Oh, yes. I see what you mean. Yeah, absolutely. If you're going to trade on any given day, for goodness sake, trade right from the very start of the program. Don't come in sort of 10 races in and pick up the threads from there. You're far better to say, right, I'm going to start right at the beginning and that gives me the chance to opt out any time I choose.
Yep, great.
After that point, and if
Also,
if I get a good return early on from a couple of successful trading opportunities, hey, I've achieved the outcome I'm desiring, and I'm gone for the day. The program's done its job for me.
Great. Just a couple of people who might miss the webinars. I do always put them up in the Facebook user group, but we're also catching up, putting them into the support portal. So you'll have all those videos available in both areas soon. So Malcolm, you'll be able to get the past episodes from the support portal pretty soon, rather than having to trawl through the Facebook user group.
Yes, and all right, so we'll just have a quick look at this race. Now, this was ruled out, and I'll explain why. I mean, obviously, if you apply the basic selection process, it's procedurally a trading race. But once again, I encourage everybody to, use the money profile as a guide. And when we look at what's going on over the lead-up intervals in this race, there's no clear money definition. There's no sort of clear, consistent money pattern emerging. The money's sort of all over the shop, and particularly at the 1 minute interval. Look at this money here. I mean, even though there's a money gap, probably the money gap size and location is belying the fact that there is no clear-cut money definition to define this top four, these four runners at the top as a usable group. So this would be one where extra coverage would be probably the way to go. Because there is that element of doubt based around the ill-defined money profile over a series of intervals, and that would, and that was the decision that was taken in this race in ruling it out. So it is important, not just look at the percentages and the money gap locations. It's a matter of saying, well, what are these things signifying to me? What is the money gap location and size signifying to me? Is it signifying to me that there is a strength of money for the runners that are defined by that gap, or is it indicating to me that there is sort of no clear definition and therefore a case to be made for the addition of extra runners? I'll go back and I'll just use that previous race as an example we looked at with that we made the now let's look at this again. There's one thing I didn't show you. If we go back over the series of intervals, and this once again endorses why it's so important to do a review as you go along. We've got our money gap located right here at it's 2.15. Now at this stage, the percentage held by those top three runners is such that the allowance for second place couldn't be made. But when we go to the next interval, you can see that the money gap gets slightly bigger and the percentage held by these top three runners is increasing because of these strengthening money support for that group. If we go to the 2 minute interval, the money gap gets even bigger and the percentage increases to a level where making the percentage allowance becomes an option. And the increasing money gap is reflecting that sort of ever-strengthening money support for these three runners relative to the rest of the field. And of course that culminates at the 1 minute interval and the money gap gets even bigger again. The percentage increases for those top three runners yet again up to 68.25. And so you can see how the cause and effect concept works very clearly there. So, as I've said in the past, it's not a matter of just recognising a location of a money gap. You want to get savvy at sort of recognising what is happening with that money gap. Is it getting bigger? Is it getting smaller? Because if it's getting bigger, it's more clearly endorsing the strength of money support for the runners that it's defining. All right, so that's the Saturday, Matt. Has anybody got any other questions about anything that?
No, mate. Just a couple of comments. Flores is just saying he's feeling very confident now, thanking you for the training up to this point. So that's good. And it is all about confidence and discipline, Flores. I think you've drilled that into his head pretty strongly there, Pete. So that's good. And just yes. A comment from Dan saying that he's been, and this is certainly outside of the general rules, everybody. So I just want to preface it with that it is definitely not something we teach, but certainly an idea worth sharing or considering is talking to professional trifecta punters. And I don't know what makes them professional, Dan, but you might need to qualify that. But is they don't pick a short favourite for third place. In our program, if the first is selected for first place and you've got two or three others, it will still be picked for a third place. But it depends on the selections and how strong and how short that favourite is. So there has been some schools of thought throughout the years to actually eliminate strong favourites out of the third place selection. But just wanted to acknowledge that is out there. That is not a common thought, but certainly some people do make those comments. So look, one thing with all of these ideas that are outside of the hard and fast training rules is if they do fit, if you just want to focus on trifectas, or if you just want to focus on percent return or quinellas or exactas or whatever else, it does brook your effort and time. It does pay dividends for you to actually take the time to go back and look at data. So collect data every day, review it, and see what the results are. Check it against the data sheets that Pete's put up. Check it against the results that we have available in our members section, and make sure that you are ahead. And don't just say, oh, well, over a day that makes sense, but over a month or funnily enough, the more successful traders we have, it's always they take more time to test a new idea. Peter would always use 6 months of data. So he would go back 3 months and then test live for 3 months without placing a trade. Because obviously looking back at history data doesn't give the full picture and doesn't allow you to make those selections on the fly. So he'll go back 3 months and go live 3 months using a lever arch file to test any idea. So if that's what you want to do, please do. We do, of course, if you want to test some ideas, let us know, because we've looked at a few ideas, obviously, over the time, and might be able to give you some direction as well. So that's sort of outside of the normal scope of these conversations, Pete, I know, but there's plenty of ways to make money with the program, and testing for your own understanding is the best way to go.
Yes, quite so, Matt.
Yeah.
All right. So what we'll do now, and I'll do it quite quickly, because I think we're all pretty clear with what's required in percentage return. I will look at a couple of examples on this day just to sort of reinforce it, and then we'll have a look at the outcome, the data sheet outcome. But this was quite unique this day, the Sunday, because the only trading opportunities were in percentage return exclusively. Namely, when we get to the first one, where is it? There we go. Right, so stock standard, we've got two runners, we've got this time a weak favourite, holding greater than 47.5% of the money, defined by a separator bigger than 1.7, and you can see clearly defined cumulative money strength here, and not so much here, but certainly back here and here and here. So it just depends. I mean, perhaps you could look at that and think, well, at the 1 minute mark, the money support for runner 4 is such that it is worth inclusion for in the group. But I tend to think you're probably better to give greater priority to what's happening at the 1 minute in terms of cumulative money, and then if you look back and notice that there is sort of consistent money strength for runners, below the possible trading group, not just at the 1 minute mark, but over several intervals, then addition could be more justified. I think this is personally a bona fide trading opportunity, given the clear-cut strength of money for those top 2 runners, as indicated in the cumulative dollars column. This is
Pete,
another one.
Sorry, Pete. Just a question from another Peter. Does anyone bet both trifectas and percent return? We probably answered this a few times, but it's not a bad way to actually bring it up and reinforce.
Yeah. Oh, what you meant concurrently, like in the same race?
On the same race, yeah.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And that sort of speaks to what I was going to talk about at the end here when I show the data sheet. It's most important, and I think I discussed this yesterday, that it's important to become competent in reviewing both trifecta and percentage return. I have had people say to me, "Oh, well, I just want to concentrate on trifecta, and and I'm not real. I don't care about percentage return." Well, that's fine. I mean, but I tend to think you're sort of denying benefits that can be derived from being competent in reviewing both. To me, it's sort of like getting a high-priced stereo unit and not knowing how to put a CD on and using it just to play the radio or whatever. Why bother? Why bother outlaying the money? I mean, at the moment, this product enables us to make selections using the trifecta and percentage return format, and it behoves everybody, at least initially, to become proficient in both formats. And then at some later stage, based on the overall results that you achieve, you can make ongoing decisions about what trading priorities. But don't just exclude one in favour of the other. Become competent at looking at both.
Right. Hey, Pete, can I get you to just walk through? I know we said a couple of weeks ago, or a couple of sessions ago, we were going to step through some thinking of the races, so maybe unlock the selections on the next one or this one, and just sort of walk us through the thinking minute by minute, just to give people just to frame up the race. Is that okay with you?
No probs. I'll use this as an example, this race here. All right, so I'll go back and we'll take it back a couple of intervals.
Because I think that's really important for people to get hold of, to actually go, you know what, I can see the result. It's like looking at, I guess, a lot of the times when we're showing these data sheets, it's like looking at the score at the end of the game. You go, oh, well, that's the, 3 tries to 2, I guess they're obviously the winner. So, but how do they actually get there? Well, they get there by having possession of the ball. They get there by winning lineouts. They get there by doing the things during the game that are going to result in the win. So yeah, I'd love you to just walk us through a couple if you don't mind.
This is a good example to use then, Matt. All right, so at this point we have a strong favourite. Why do we have a strong favourite? Now notice we forget about the pool. Don't worry about the pool in the earlier stages, because we only worry about pool size right at the trading point. So sure, our favourite number 6 is a weak favourite in terms of percentage, but is deemed to be a strong favourite because it has an associated red separator. So we're going to be including that strong favourite in our group, and at that point, that's going to be our group size. All right, we go down to the next interval. Now, the group's going to be exactly the same because the favourite remains number 6. The percentage that it's attracted has increased slightly. It's got quite a large associated separator, and it's starting to establish money dominance over its counterparts further down. You see that? And in cumulative terms, it's attracted nearly double the money of that the next runner, number 11, is attracting. All right, we go to the 2-minute interval. Now at 2 minutes, of course, we have a defining separator at the second runner, but in order for us to select the top 2 runners as our trading group at this point, we need the group to be holding at least 47.5% of the cumulative money, and we need the defining separator to be at least 1.7. So notwithstanding this quite clear-cut developing dominance here for these top 2 runners, trading in the race would not be enabled because our group would have to extend down to there. And when we come to the 1-minute interval, looking at, purely from a, we have our weak favourite. Now once again you can see we have a separator that's bigger than the 1.7 here, but the percentage held by those top 2 runners is nowhere near the minimum requirement of 47.5. So even though these 2 runners here are very dominant cumulatively in terms of money support, we can't trade with 6 and 11 as a group. Now, I guess we could look at it and say, well, our favourite is a weak favourite, right? And I've got a group here, defined group, that's holding more than 47.5% of the money on its own, and the favourite's got a positive value in the U-diff column. What about as an option trading with 11, 7, 13 and 8 against the weak favourite? But would that be sensible? Because if we're going to trade against a weak favourite, we want our trading group to be demonstrating money competitiveness with the favourite. And we don't really have that. We have it with runner 11, as identified by the location of this separator, but these 3 runners here are nowhere near money competitive with our favourite or indeed runner 11. So that would suggest that the right option would be to include the favourite in our group. It deserves to be included in the group because of its, its prevailing dominant money support over that lead-up period. And of course that trades us out of the race. So does that help with?
Sorry, Pete, I've muted myself and I was talking away. Yeah, that's great, Pete. Look, that's a pretty succinct rundown of that race. I like that. So, and of course, if there's at any time a couple of races you'd like Pete to do that with, do go ahead and contact him during the week, because that could be a 10-minute call and it might shed a bit of light on the selections that are being made. So please take advantage of what's available to you there. And also, prior to in 2 weeks' time, if there's any that are causing angst, causing issues, do go ahead and let us know prior, because we would love to be able to. Look, it's all well and good to it's all. Sorry, I'm just reading the comments here. It's great for Pete to make up his own theme for the day, but if we get a couple of questions and comments and thoughts, then we can start using the ideas from everybody here to go ahead and respond. So that's much easier to understand why the race qualifies. Okay, do you want to see a qualifying race, Chris, or you're happy with what Pete showed? So yeah, if you could just respond to that, please, Chris. Or not, no matter. Okay, cool. Okay, yeah, so let's do a few more of those next. We're sort of almost out of time here, Pete, but I'll make a note, and if you could remember, and if both of us, maybe even Chris, if you want to jump on next week and say, hey, please remember to do this. If there's three of us remembering to do it, one of us might remember and actually get that done, and that might flesh out, rather than just showing race after race, Pete, really go deep, as they say, a deep dive into one or two races, and that might peel back the onion a few more layers to help everybody. How's that sound, Pete?
Yeah, that's fine. No problems at all. Quite happy to do that.
Because, guys, all we're here to do, like, our only job is to make you successful. Seriously, that is our only job. I'm not here on a Saturday morning for any other reason than to see everybody who has our program be as successful as they want to be. Some people are going to drop the ball or drop their bundle, I guess you could say, and not trade. Some people are going to be enthusiastic observers. And then some people, and I've got quite a few on the line today, who are traders who make this their job to actually make this work and their job to earn money from it. And we want to make sure that everybody is satisfied with what they've got. So let us know how we can help you better. And because that's all, it would be much easier, not easier, but it'd be more entertaining and more provide you with more knowledge if we went, here's what we want, here's what, no problem. Doug's just saying, thank you very much, great experience. Doug, if you came back and said, Matt, actually, I really want you to look at MR2 and walk me through that because I lost that race. Was I right to lose the race, or was it a losing race, or did I flum it somehow? That would give us time to really unpack that race for you. Isn't that right, Pete?
Yeah, that's quite so. Quite so.
Cool. Here to help.
All right. Well, in final summing up here, as I've shown the data sheet, as everybody can see, and I guess there's a case to be pleaded here for becoming proficient at both percentage return and trifecta, because if you were denying the use of percentage return, then this particular day would have offered no trading opportunities, and you can see by, prudently using percentage return format, you've generated a reasonable, healthy return.
Sure. And if people have a certain bias against certain trading styles, that's fine. Like, we're not here to tell you how to run your business. I mean, if you don't want to sell milk at your shop, you don't have to. But this is a business, but it probably does pay to at least understand it, because I know some people here don't want to trade percent return, and that's totally okay, or vice versa. But do understand Absolutely. How they two correlate, and I think that's something that everybody should understand. And certainly when selecting trifectas, you go, you know what? Let's understand how they correlate, and then go, you know what? And people might be okay with having a day of no trades on a Sunday, Pete. So look, we are certainly not here to tell you the only way to do it. We're here to provide you with the options.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, the choice can be made by people, but it doesn't, particularly in the formative period. I think it's a benefit to become, aware of the options that are available, and then you can make an informed decision about, what you want to use or what you don't want to use.
Perfect. Well, look, there's a couple. Pete, do we have time to go through the trifecta version of this particular race? I know you've got calls to make at 11, which is in about 5 minutes. Can we quickly go through that, or you've got to jump?
Well, let's go back. I can probably, we can. I'll give you a quick summation of this race, Matt, and I can do it very, very clearly and very quickly. And I spoke about this. I always speak about these in the webinars that I do. When you're reviewing trifecta back at 5 minutes or whenever you start, it's important to do an overview of what's presenting. Get the lie of the land, as it were. Now, looking at this, I wouldn't hold out much hope that this is going to develop at all as a trifecta opportunity. Because for a start, the percentage groups that the program has given me have created combinations way in excess of 60.
And it's very unlikely
Secondly,
to have a trifecta actually come up with a very high favourite, $4.50 as a favourite, and then a very gradual increase as you go through the next couple of horses. Isn't that right, Pete?
quite so. And you see, I suppose trading profiles in races don't change all that much. You'll notice that the reason why the selections have created so many combinations is the money spread is so even. So there's a certain level of, could we say, better uncertainty in this race. The market doesn't have a clue. It's got no direction. It doesn't really have a clue where success is going to come from. It can't limit the tie down where success is going to come from, and that's very much reflected in what we see in this program. And of course, we've got a very weak favourite here with a large win dividend, as Matthew pointed out, and so the likelihood of this turning itself around and becoming a strong trifecta opportunity is practically nil. So this is where economising your time is important. There's no use sort of sitting, like in a robotic fashion and going, oh, that's at 5 minutes and I'll wait in 4 minutes and then 3 minutes, sitting in trifecta, when there is a possibility that there could be quite a worthwhile trading opportunity developing in percentage return. In fact, there's more likely, looking at this profile, race profile, for there to be an opportunity in percentage return. And that's what we saw as we reviewed down from one of the lead-up intervals just prior. So if I go from, and I take this down to the 1 minute mark, you can see it would have been a total waste of time looking at it in trifecta, because I've still got the 90 odd combinations sitting there, no money gap locations, because the money, the betting market is all over the place. So there's no market certainty, and so that you can economise your time by doing that and saying, well, the information is telling me that there's not going to be much trifecta joy in this race. Therefore, I can concentrate all my efforts in percentage return. And in a nutshell, what is required for a trifecta opportunity to develop is clearly defined market direction, particularly on a finite group of runners high up in the field. Because if you get that developing, then you're going to have money gaps high up in the field, which will define first place selections and maybe first and second place selections, and that will limit the number of combinations to give you a possible trading opportunity.
Fantastic.
So I hope that sort of gives everybody a little bit more of an insight into how to go about this.
Brilliant. All right, Pete. Well, we're just after 11, and if anybody's got any further questions, do go ahead and email Pete. Peter is best to be got at his email address, not webinar at, like replying to the webinar here, because that goes to me and a few other people administrative-wise, and that's not going to get directly to Peter. So use his email address, Peter at, not replying to these webinar thingos. All right, everybody. Thank you very much. All the best for today, and follow the rules, follow the program, and have a great day. See you later, Pete.
Yeah, see you later, Matt. Have a good weekend, and goodbye, everybody. Thanks very much for your attendance today, and we'll welcome you back in a fortnight's time.
Fantastic. Bye for now.
Bye now.